Welcome back, everybody, for our final session of today. I'm really pleased to welcome our closing speaker, who's going to talk to us about failing forward and the necessity of risk-taking for success. So we have Harriet Green, who is a global business leader and former chairman and CEO at IBM and Asia Pacific. She is no stranger to risk-taking. She's lived and worked on 4 different continents, and in 2012 she became chief executive of Thomas Cook and received an award for Businesswoman of the Year because she turned around a business that was recovering from the brink of bankruptcy. But Harriet is also keen for me to say that she is also a wife, a mother, a daughter, a friend, and a colleague. Harriet, you are very welcome.
Thank you so much. I hope that you can all hear me. And I've listened in to a number of the other speakers, and I'm quite trepidatious. Obviously, you know that I'm not from the civil service, and I was asked to talk about risk in the context of one's career. So I'm going to share a few thoughts, a few things that I've applied to my own life and work. But I think the most important thing about these sessions is your questions and my attempts to answer them honestly. You can see all about my career and the risks that I've taken on my website at harrietgreen.com. And I'm really, really honored to have a chance to talk with women who are changing our country at this critical time. And I think that's where I'd like to start in terms of inputs and advice, because I do think that this vortex of change that we are all experiencing right now provides enormous opportunity. I know that some of the data suggests that women have been most affected in the workplace through work from home and working at all through COVID. But I think that if you take the extraordinary climate change, health change, technology change, and a rightful deep inclusion change, then the opportunity to take risk as we come out of it is greater. And I will share some specifics historically and practically of what I mean about that. But everything in terms of risk-taking, leadership, your positions, your balancing, all the things that you've been talking about today starts with you, your sort of state of being, your self-care, your emotional fitness, and sort of celebration of who you are. And I've written extensively about emotional fitness, the elements of emotional fitness, self-awareness, empathy, the importance of play and curiosity, resilience and mindfulness, and really mastering the art of effective communication to many, many different types of stakeholder groups. And I'll share with you 3 tips that I have learned as I've tried to prepare my emotional fitness for a marathon stretch of risk-taking or a rocky path or a difficult challenge. I worry a lot. I think about things, I worry about them. And I've been able to increase my productivity by scheduling a worry hour. I usually do it first thing in the morning when I'm kind of at my most buoyant and positive, and I try and work through what I'm going to do about the worries I can control. Building resilience. I'm a big collector of a self-esteem file. I collect the positive, the kind, the meaningful inputs so that I can revisit them when I'm low, when I need them, when I need to be bolstered for this risk or the potential failure. And then the improved communication. I think the millennial generation gave us the most wonderful repertoire to communicate well for emotional fitness. Emojis, remojis are a powerful way to sort of share quickly and help others as they may be having ideas stolen. They may have challenges speaking up. There's a lovely one. I've got your back. This is a prickly subject. I see how hard you're working. I'm not quite ready to talk about this yet with the little monkey. And I'm stuck in my own head. And so this emotional fitness that I've talked about, I think is more important than physical fitness as we get prepared to embark upon a change, a tough period, some risk taking. I think that also in terms of our resilience, and there is a great deal written about resilience. I've researched and shared from a business perspective how we can help ourselves and those around us be more resilient. Cultivating much more compassion. I sadly learned this quite late on in my career, being kind to myself, and was always, I think, more compassionate towards my team. But the research shows so powerfully that expressed and demonstrated compassion increases all of our positive emotions, our working relationships, and our cooperation and collaboration. Something that I learned to do at IBM, running technology businesses across 14 different countries, over 100,000 employees, was to try and compartmentalize my sort of cognitive load. Apparently, on a good day, we receive 11 million bits of information every single second. But our brains, even the most brilliant of brains, can only process about 40 bits. So if we can't reduce the input, the amount of information that we receive, then we're going to need to compartmentalize doing certain tasks at certain times. It's sort of like exercise. You don't do that the whole time. You sort of monotask around this cognitive overload. And I have found that enormously helpful in helping my overall resilience, particularly at times of stress or the risk taking that we're going to be talking about. And then exercising much more mindfulness. Being in Asia really helped me with this a great deal, and get trained. You know, there are social psychologists that are really, the data on their research is so compelling that increased mindfulness really predicts judgment accuracy and insight related problem solving. And there are just so many amazing courses online that just help you think and take this on board yourself. I also think it is essential when we come and talk about risk taking around having the skills that the world needs. If you're going to undertake certain risks, certain new adventures, certain new perilous, or even not that perilous, but you're worried about the next steps, I think it's very important for us as women to be equipped with the skills that the world needs. And of course, some of these are more technical skills, analytical thinking and innovation, complex problem solving, leadership and social influence. But many of them are indeed around life skills. The softer skills, I don't really like the term softer skills. They were probably coined by those other than women, but life skills are becoming increasingly important with this march of AI and machine learning. Everyone wants an AI capability to be diagnosing a critical disease. It's a set of tasks that computers are very effective at doing. Can see that there are 9,000 different drug trials starting on any given day. But we'd all of us want a human with the necessary compassion, consideration for the family, when it's explained to you that someone, very close to you is very sick. So I think it's very important. The World Economic Forum has their top 10 skills for 2025. And I do think that this is hugely important for our state of being to undertake some really, really big change. And I think also right now, in the moment, after yesterday's announcement and this new phase of us beginning to move through this vortex of huge change, that I think we need to be boosting each other's morale and indeed our own. And having lived and worked in 4 different continents, been in many different types of small, medium, and large businesses at points of enormous inflection, some with 17 weeks to live and some that need to go through enormous change, otherwise they won't last the next 17 years. And there are a few gems for me about how we boost our own morale and those within our team, which I think are going to be very, very important through March and April and May and June and July. That's even if everything goes to plan, and maybe it won't. And so boosting all of these elements of your leadership, I think, are so important. So the first is psychological safety. Personally, I believe leadership is downright simple in one central tenet. It's about trust. Listening to the previous beautiful speaker and answering the question about working for an esteemed politician. And it's, about trust. Do you trust the person that you work for and those around you? And I think creating an environment of fairness where everyone is a favorite or no one is a favorite, encouraging constructive yet outspoken views whilst deeply embracing inclusion and diversity. I think this is so important in the upcoming months. And with individual and collective trust, you can, as an individual in that team, then be yourself. There's a psychological fabric of safety which allows us to bring 200% of ourselves to work, which is going to be very critical in this upcoming period. I also think that emphasizing learning over winning. I think team members of all ages, all sizes, all shapes need to feel at this time that we are learning, that we are getting somehow stronger and better, that we are being helped to get the skills that the world needs, whether that's shadowing someone, internships, a new assignment, simple sabbaticals. I think all of these help to boost immediate and longer term morale. And then something I seem to have spent most of my career doing, which is identifying and celebrating little victories. Shout about the successes and the rock stars who made them happen, and really heralding the power of high performance teams. And I think many of you will already have used a model that I've used extensively in running businesses. It's called the SCARF model by the amazing David Rocks. And SCARF stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And I think you all know there are so many ways in terms of more regular one-on-ones with your team, the fun that the previous speaker spoke to, discretion at the point of decision-making. I have no understanding of what that means in the civil service, but I know in businesses that's hugely important. So I'd really recommend the SCARF model as you get your teams buoyed up to really cope with the remainder of this extraordinary year. So I've shared all of that because if you are strong in yourself, if your emotional fitness is good, your resilience is good, you have the skills that the world needs, and that you need to do this particular task, I will get to the question that I was asked to cover about risk. I think everyone's perception of risk, and indeed the fear of failure, is quintessentially personal. And I start by sharing that I was a child who lost a parent. And so kind of the worst had already happened to me, and I survived. And so I think I've come to learn quite a high risk appetite. First of all, I profoundly believe, and I never normally do sports star quotes because I'm not really a kind of sports star quote type of person, but there's one from an ice hockey coach in the US called Wayne Gretzky. And it says 100% of the shots you don't take will certainly not go in. And I kind of tend to look at risk, in that way, that it maybe is a lost opportunity. And the wonderful Theodore Roosevelt also said, it is hard to fail, but it's really, really worse never to have tried to succeed. So I caveat what I'm about to say by having a slightly more risk appetite than perhaps you have. So forgive me for that, but I wanted to kind of equip you with some things that you might do as you think about a new project that seems a bit risky, about a new opportunity that you feel you might fail at. I actually used these quite recently when I was asked if I would be prepared to appear on Question Time. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's quite a risky thing to do. Let me go through my kind of risk prep that I do. So the first one is, what will failure and success look like in this situation? When I was a little girl, my grief counselor used to say to me, okay, well, what's the worst and the best that could happen here? And, obviously we prefer success as an outcome, but sometimes just bracing yourself and defining what failure might look like helps you to move to the next step, articulating it, visualizing it in some way. Then secondly, that, what's the absolute worst and the best that could happen here? What you gain if you succeed, for you, for your family, for your team, what you stand to lose if you fail. Will you start over? What would you need to start over? Can you get work? So number 2 for me is that very precise, I think it is a favored psychotherapist question as you're helping, through projected turmoil. Number 3 that I always ask, I did for Question Time, what should I think, feel, and do to affect the most positive outcome? Most success and failure stories have a lot to do with your attitude and those that you choose to take with you on this new adventure. And so reining in all of that positive energy, the thoughts and the actions, so that you're prepared and ready for the excitement that might embrace. And then number 4 is the outcome centered around my attitude towards the challenge or aptitude to learning new skills. I've generally tried to avoid doing a brand new job with a brand new company in a brand new country in a place where I don't speak the language. So as can-do and as positive as I am, I think you need to make sure that you have the necessary skills to take on this challenge and be a success. And then perhaps the most important, for me at least, is whose opinions am I worrying about here? If I do or I don't do this, who are you trying to appease or please? Is this for you? Is this for your partner, for your children, for your mother, for your dead father? You know, what are you really at core worrying about here? So those are the things that I go through. And then two really positive kind of points to close, I hope. I think this is an amazing time to take risk, because if it doesn't work, we can pop it in the COVID bucket. There's a lot of erratic performance, not just in government, organizations, businesses, you name it. This is a huge vortex of change on 4 axes. It's a wonderful time to take some risk and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, I'm not sure the whole world will notice at this time. I think the other thing is that out of great change, some incredible risk and innovation has led growth and psychological well-being. After the 50s pandemic, Sony released the transistor radio. It was a huge risk for the corporation. It cost millions and millions, and it changed the corporation's trajectory, and it changed many people's psychological sense of listening to that tranny that some of you as old as me may remember doing. Secondly, in terms of taking risk through a vortex of change, I was in Silicon Valley in 2000 when the dot-com bubble burst. And just after it, Apple launched their iPod, which transformed mine and many, many other people's relationship with music. And in the dire depths of the 1970s in the US, Microsoft was formed, which has gone on to be one of the most valued corporations in the world. So I think it is worth taking a look at some of those adventures and some of those risks. And I leave you with my 2 favorite quotes on this that I hope you will write in the margins, or I'm happy to share these if they've been of interest. But one is from Edison, who, as you know, was famous for never, ever giving up in his, construction of the light bulb. Without his tenacity and almost total hard-headedness, I'm not sure we'd have had a light bulb for at least another 10 years. And he said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And maybe that's a very male approach, I don't know, but I always love it. And then the lovely Richard Branson, an eternal entrepreneur, who says every risk is worth taking as long as it's for a good cause and contributes to a good life. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm excited to hear your questions, and I'm handing back to the lovely Vicky.
Hello. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. The comments down the side have been absolutely amazing. You are truly an inspiration to everybody at the end of what has been quite a long day, to be fair, and not without its technical hitches, but just to listen to you speaking has been incredible. Thank you. So we do have a number of questions. And a load of comments about some of the phrases that you've used. Put it in the COVID bucket, put it in the COVID bin. They're absolutely brilliant. So the first question is there anything that the private sector does to combat inequality that you think the civil service needs to do better?
So I think that I'm not speaking from a great font of knowledge on the civil service, but I can tell you what I've seen work in commercial organizations. For example, as the CEO and chairman of IBM Asia Pac, we had in a very large leadership team, because there were 14 countries. You can't run Indonesia unless you kind of speak Indonesian and know the market, etc. But we had close to 50% female executives. And so I think that having either explicit or clear targets so that the psychology the physiology and the anatomy of diversity and inclusion is just totally accepted. There is a clear mission, there is a clear plan, there are clear metrics, you celebrate successes, it becomes the norm. The second is an issue that, again, I don't know that the civil service has, but many corporations and whole countries, let's take India, have as a challenge, where the majority of the population is under 30, and the majority of people who run it or run corporations are certainly not. So one of the things I did that I absolutely loved and worked wonderfully was to have mutual mentoring, where every one of my older leaders had a mentor who was a Generation Zer or a millennial, and the learnings from each other to bridge that huge age diversity was really powerful. But mostly it comes down to someone key who's in charge saying, I believe that diversity and the act of inclusion creates two outcomes. One is better solutions, better civil policy, better public policy, better results. And two, it means that everyone, because of their age, their sex, their color, their creed, their sexuality, physical and cognitive ability, can bring 200% of themselves to work.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Loads of questions coming through, but lots of really good comments about how inspirational they found it, how uplifting they found what you've been saying at the end of the day, and how positive you are as you speak. What is helping you stay confident at the moment?
So, I mean, I guess I'm like everyone. It's been a little challenging the last year, but I've tried to do a couple of things. The first is to divide my life into three things: kind of the physicality, running, jumping, skipping, trying to stay a little bit fit and healthy, whether that's dancing around the sitting room or running a bit. And then to find vents for my creativity, writing and reading, starting an international book club and being creative. And then very much focused on purpose, the work that I'm doing around social mobility, creating a product and a platform to help those entering the workspace, that I have some renewed purpose. But one thing I do every single day is try and work out what are the things that I can control. Unlike you, I don't get to control public policy. I don't get to influence the Prime Minister or this government. I get to volunteer and interact with the most amazing NHS staff. But what is the work that we can, what can we control? And then sort of breathe life into that in the best way. Whether that's taking a walk, smelling the roses, just trying to take the best of this period, which has changed our axis a little, where we're lucky enough to do so. And I know not everyone is, but if you follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you will see that I live and breathe that on a daily basis.
Brilliant, thank you. I am going to follow you on Twitter. I'm going to find you immediately we finish today. How do you deal with a situation where you feel your time's being wasted? The question is asked by somebody who says in their current role, they're expected to attend many meetings and sometimes feel that time is wasted. But if they say they're not going to attend, it seems to be frowned upon. So how do you deal with situations where you just think that your time's just not being used for the right purpose or wasted?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it happens to all of us. I think, first of all, whatever work it is you're doing, I mean, I always have to know what are the top 5 things I have to deliver. What's the output? And any meeting that I attend, I do this now. What is the purpose? Who owns it? How long is it going to be? Is there any pre-read? I'm really monstrous on pre-read. I don't like to go to meetings unless I know kind of what it's going to be about. I don't know if that's, I'm saying sacrilegious things in a civil service sense, but I think it applies across any organization. What are we discussing? Why is my input valuable? And what is the planned outcome? And in a gracious and constructive way, whoever has called that meeting, asking those questions and ensuring you get some semblance of prep and response. And then if you do, it is valuable sharing that positive feedback with the meeting maker. And where it isn't, say, well, I attended, I tried to contribute, but these are some suggestions to make it more valuable in the future. And until time, maybe we'll give those meetings a break. So I think you do own your own destiny to a degree, but need to contribute to the positive output.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to take you back to the start of your address now, where you talked about having your worry hour. One of the questions we've been asked is that this person is a worrier themselves. What are your top tips for turning your worries into positive actions?
Yes, yes, very. I can talk from the heart on this. So I think this goes way back in my red thread to my childhood. So first thing I do, all my worries have three buckets. I'm big on buckets, as you can tell. The first bucket is way, way outside of my control. I am deeply worried about a whole host of things, but if I'm committed to certain purposes, I write letters to MPs. I'm always trying to make my voice heard. But seriously, can I affect, by worrying about it, will I do anything? And if the answer is absolutely no, then it goes into that bucket. It doesn't go away, but I've trained myself to put the lid firmly down on it to keep it in control. The second is, yes, I could do something, but I need to do a bit of work. I need to find a network. I need to talk to the Ministry of Education. I need to get Vodafone to provide these data credits for free. I need to talk to whoever. I need to do some work. And what I do in that second bucket is I schedule the time in my diary. So I feel I've done something, but it needs more work. And then the third bucket, which I'm ashamed to say is always fuller than the other bucket, is the things that I'm going to work on immediately and get fixed. And that way it's a smaller list, and I feel that I'm doing something meaningful in the areas where I can, have the greatest control. Does that make sense?
Certainly does to me, yes. Yeah, I've got a very large bucket three, I think. It seems to get larger by the day, but there we go.
Yes.
Another good question. Sorry, can I take the next question? Is that?
Oh, of course. I'm
Um,
sorry. I was just laughing with you at the size of your bucket.
sorry, that's good. It's just I thought maybe you were going to say something else and I'd interrupted you, which is something I'm very bad at
Not at all.
apparently. How can you make yourself take risks you know could be good for you, but the outcome is unknown and all you can think of is potentially the negative that might happen, particularly while we're in this current pandemic?
Yeah, I think that the gauge that I use, I think it's a super question, really. The gauge that I use is, I think you can probably tell I'm a pretty positive soul. I get pretty upbeat about most things.
Yeah.
But if there's something that I think, oh, I know I could do this. I really think it's worth a shot. I listen to my gut. I listen, even though my aperture of positivity is wide. It's like looking through the camera sometimes and you think, oh, that is a good shot. Because then, even if it's not successful, you'll have fun doing it. And I think doing things that you really enjoy, is part of ambition. And the previous speaker made me think of something on this. I don't really care whether being ambitious is not a good word to be used about women, but I think that sometimes we are less gracious about being ambitious because we're not having fun doing it. And so I think sometimes showing that you're having fun, that you're doing it, and that you're learning or you're experiencing something. I've always been a big volunteer. I sort of put up my hand and say, I'll do it. I remember when my boss at Arrow we had just bought some 4 or 5 companies in sub-Saharan Africa, and he said, I need someone to go lead them. And, no one put their hand up around the table. And I felt responsible, and I thought, oh gosh, I would love this. So I put up my hand, and it was a very, very challenging, set of assignments. I learned so much. I'm not sure I was hugely successful, but I learned so much. At a time when Mandela's government was forming, and South Africa was repositioning itself in the world. So if you don't get that bus and you think, oh, this would be good for my CV, but I just don't think I could bear working for him, don't do it. Just don't do it. Life's too short to work for someone who you already know won't love you to pieces, won't encourage you, won't support you, won't teach you. There are plenty of people out there who will.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And your ambitious comment is really interesting, because I had a conversation with my mother some years ago about why I should be ambitious and why my brother should be as well. And the conversation was about the Miliband's when Ed won over David for Labour leader. And my mother was adamant that as the younger sibling, Ed should never have stood against his older brother. And as the younger sibling, I was equally as adamant that he had every right to do so. But she was basically saying that I should never have done that if my older brother had wanted to do it. And I never quite bottomed out with her whether it was because I was a younger sister or a younger sibling. But it was one of those conversations about being ambitious, and if you want to do it, having a go for it, that I think, we should all be ambitious if we can be. So that was interesting. Is the wrong word for
very
females?
interesting.
Yeah. A couple more, if I may, still around risk taking. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken, and did it pay off?
Yeah, I think there's a personal one and a business one. Personal one is I was busy building my career, and I didn't really think much about, having a relationship, or, I was moving countries and doing exciting things. And I wrote about this actually a couple of weeks ago. It's the first time I've ever written about it. And it was just after 9/11, and in New York. I was living in Manhattan, and all of us needed a little bit of help after 9/11 in a small island in what had occurred. And she basically said, you need to kind of open your aperture to love. You need to let it in. That was her phrase. She was a great psychotherapist. You need to let it in. And you are way too worried about protecting yourself from future loss. And then remarkably, this was in the October, and then remarkably in December, I met a man and kind of married him and his 2 children, who at the time lived with him. And it sort of was the toughest thing I think I've ever done, relatively late in life, to let love in and try and balance all of those elements. On a business front, undoubtedly, Thomas Cook had 17 weeks to live, and we transformed Thomas Cook in the period that I was able to lead it, and it was a real horror, what 6 years afterwards transpired. But actually, it was also a moment about the civil service, or about politics, that was a great one for me, because I was asked to attend the select committee on the collapse of Thomas Cook, even though it was some 5 years after I had been the CEO. And it was run by Rachel Reeves. And I thought she did an incredible job of managing that process. And at first, I didn't wish to attend and didn't see why I should. But I was so pleased that I did, because many of the truths and the demons that had haunted me, that if I'd been allowed to continue running the business, it would be around today, was able to come out. But that was a huge risk.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Going back to some of the other things that you've mentioned, you've talked about softer skills. And the questioner here is saying they get called a bit fluffy sometimes because they try and use those softer skills. How would you handle that?
What a horrible word, isn't it? Fluffy. I mean, just the very nature of it. This is why I think when people say softer skills, they're not softer, they're life skills. They're skills around empathy, they're skills around humor, skills around active listening, skills around active asking, developing a full repertoire of communication skills such that you can communicate the death of someone, the failure of a public policy, a new product, a new platform. And I think the last guy who said that women talk too much in meetings, the Japanese head of the Olympic Committee, is looking for a new job right now. So, I think the
Good.
days have gone when you can say, oh, Vicky occasionally interrupts or Harriet talks too much, therefore they are lesser human beings. I doubt Vicky does interrupt too much. I'm sure I do talk too much, but this is our style of getting stuff done, and we can do parts of it better, but human skills are more important. If you take the largest and most profitable company in the whole world, employs more robots, has more AI and more machine learning than it has humans. So we might as well get good at the things that the world needs right now. I think that's, if someone says fluffy, what I always mischievously say is, I'm so sorry, I don't understand the use of that word in this context. Do you mean pink? Do you mean woolly? Do you mean, would you like to help me define fluffy? With my best Miss Jean Brodie sort of face on, just to show that I disapprove. So have a go at that nicely.
I think that's a really good suggestion. I might have a try for that one too. I think we've just got time for one more question. It's an interesting one. It's just come in right at the end, but actually, it sort of takes us back full circle. How and when did you start this amazing career that you've had?
Well, I left Nowhereville in the Cotswolds. I come from a tiny village, no pub, no coffee shop, no hotel, no nothing. Tiny little world, tiny, small world. I was privileged to be well educated in a local school and went to uni and loved going to university, Queen Mary College, King's College, which I now sit on the board of. And I replied to an advertisement to be a management trainee of a technology distribution company on Slough Estates. And I loved it because they taught me everything, how to collect money, how to do marketing, how to do procurement. And I was just really good and became managing director at 29. And I got young female MD of the year and had to sit on a podium with Greg Dyke. Most of you are way too young to know who he is, but that in itself was a great learning.
Is that the BBC, Harriet? Greg Dyke?
He was ITV head, and Greg Dyke did a lot to promote women in diversity, but he was quite a mercurial character, shall we say.
I picked the wrong channel there, didn't I? I knew it was something
Oh, but
television
it's
related.
still, you knew it was TV. Most wouldn't.
Fair enough. Well, I'm of an age, I think. Right, literally just at zero time. I'm blown away, Harriet. The comments down the side, they started with how stunning your jacket was and how it was matching your positivity, and they've just carried on with what a brilliant, inspiring, just amazing presentation that you've done for us, and the way that you've answered the questions. Some really good tips, particularly around fluffy, which I really like. Thank you. So thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today, and just amazing, really brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been my great honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think that I am now, yes, here we are. I'm on screen alone. It's time for me to wrap up the day. I'm going to share some highlights with you, but I'm going to start with Harriet because I thought she was just amazing. And she was slightly concerned before we started that she wasn't going to be relevant enough. But looking at the comments that you've put down the side today, just incredible. Things like the worry hour, the use of the phrase, those other than women, and pop it in the COVID bin are the three things that I think I'm going to take away, on top of the advice about how to handle worries and how to turn them into something positive. But if we start at the top of the day, we had Susan from the Department for Education who spoke about slaying the dragon and made that amazing offer to speak to anybody's daughters, and then altered it to daughters and sons about what their choices were as they were growing up and what careers they could take. And then I sat into the breakout session with Gifty. She made us chuckle when she said if she ran, she was being chased, but talked about work-life balance and how she would allow anybody to do any housework if she wanted to. And everybody recognised what Gifty put in those first slides about what her life was like and what she had to balance. And then we moved on to Claire, who's a particular favourite of mine, and she spoke about her red shoelaces and how she allowed them to stand out and show her personality when she was asked to be different. And that the comments down the side of her chat have kickstarted a conversation about whether we should combine women into leadership and BAME into leadership, and maybe have combined events rather than separate events. We are going to take that one forward as a question. Alison, in the next breakout session, who spoke about mental health and anxiety, she was amazing. She had incredible self-awareness. She realised that she had been a bully and didn't want to be and hadn't intended to be, but that was what she'd done. And she used her own self-awareness to then develop herself so that she is now more comfortable, and she still has her anxieties, but she can move on. And then finally, before Harriet, Helen, who has had an amazing career and comes across as very kind and authentic and clearly successful. But what a dreadful comment about having to wear more makeup at the very start of her SCS journey. And she told us that it was important to take ourselves seriously, because if we don't, we give other people permission not to take us seriously too. So those are my big takeaways from today. I need to thank all of our speakers again. I know we've done that while they've been here in person. And I'd like to thank the organisers, because sat behind this platform that I'm at is a team of about 8 people who are bringing people in and out of sessions and making sure the sound and the connections are working well. Tomorrow, we will send you an electronic feedback form, and we'd be really grateful if you would complete it for us. But before then, there's still the opportunity for you to network on the GRIP platform if you want to. There is speaker slides, or there will be speaker slides and video recordings will be made available to you about a week after the event. And we need you please to come back in the morning for a 9:15 start. We have our first speaker at 9:15, so I'll be here, and I would really like to see, although it's virtually, all of you back tomorrow. Thank you very much.